Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 171, entitled How EmergencyWP Can Protect Your Online Legacy. It was published on Thursday the 19th of March 2020. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before we begin, I've got a few extra bits of housekeeping. I've got the usual stuff, which I'll do first, and then I'll come on to something a little bit after that. So the usual stuff is how to keep in touch with us at WP Builds. Head over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe, and over there you're going to be able to find all the different ways that we publish our content. So for example, there's a newsletter that you can sign up to, and we will tell you when we produce our podcast, which is this, and also a newsletter for when we hear about WordPress-related deals. As soon as they come out, we'll send you an email, so that's a separate newsletter. There's also our Facebook group of over 2,400 very friendly WordPressers. Honestly, it is a tremendously friendly environment, so you might want to join that. And also, at the moment, we also have, the usual stuff like finding us on your favourite podcast player, our Twitter feed, and all of that good stuff. Another page would be wpbuilds.com/deals. That's a bit like Black Friday, but every day of the week. Coupon codes, significant percentages off some quite popular WordPress products, so hosting and plugins and themes and so on. Go check that out, wpbuilds.com/deals. And of course, wpbuilds.com/advertise if you would like to have your product or service put in front of a WordPress specific audience. It is quite an effective way if you've got a WordPress product or service, because our audience is super WordPress focused. So yeah, wpbuilds.com/advertise. Okay, the next bit of housekeeping that I want to do is all about the actual content of today's podcast. Now, I recorded this podcast episode quite a long time ago, certainly several months before Christmas. And at that point, we didn't have the COVID-19, the coronavirus problem that we do now. And this plugin is very timely. It's all about the ways that you can kind of preserve your online legacy. Now, I am kind of putting a bit of a caveat at the front of this episode. It's a bit like a trigger warning, if you know what I mean. And what I'm saying is that if you are impacted by some of the things that we might be talking about, then I don't know if this episode's going to be for you. If you are really suffering from the strain of the COVID virus, or there's people around you and you really feel that this particular episode and the topic that we're going to be discussing, if that's not for you, then maybe come back to this one in the future. There's nothing particularly inflammatory or strange. It's just maybe. I'm just letting you know that maybe the topics that we deal with might be a little bit tricky, because we deal with how to preserve your legacy should you pass away. So the plugin is aimed at kind of creating a storage, a repository of all the things that you would like to hand over should you pass away. So that could be the keys for your online password manager. It could be messages that you want to give to people. In fact, it could be just about anything. And so Albert Bruckman has written EmergencyWP, a plugin which can do all of that. And we talk about how it works, how it might be best suited, what use cases there are for it, what the roadmap has, and also, how can it possibly know when to trigger these messages that are going to be sent out and deliver the payloads that you tell it you want to be delivered to the people that you wish to receive them. So it's a really interesting episode. Now, it might be worth mentioning at this point that Albert has very kindly offered WP Builds listeners a bit of a coupon code. So if you listen to this podcast episode and you like the sound of what you're hearing, then you can redeem 50% off the lifetime bulletproof package if you redeem it before the 26th of March, and you're going to use the coupon code WPBuilds2020. So that's all lowercase, no spaces, WPBuilds2020. If you fail to listen to this podcast and make use of that week, then you can actually hold on until the 16th of April 2020 and you'll get a 20% discount. So just to recap, if you listen to this and by the 26th of March, you can get 50% off, and up until the 16th of March, you can get 20% off using offer code WPBuilds2020. Right, I hope that you enjoy the podcast. Hello there and welcome to the interview part of the WP Builds podcast. I'm glad that you've stayed with us until this point. Today, all the way from Germany, I have, well, do you know what? I was trying to say his name at the beginning. I'm going to say it and then hopefully he will say it correctly shortly afterwards. Albert Bruchmann.
Oh, yes, that was quite correct.
I blew it. I really
let
thought.
me spell it. It's Albert Bruchmann. Yeah.
Okay. And Albert and I haven't known each other for very long, but the most peculiar of situations arose in the WP Builds Facebook group because a thread popped up where somebody basically said, listen, what should we do in the situation where somebody passes away? And they were meaning themselves. In other words, I am the person that's got all the keys to the website kingdom. Imagine I was to pass away, and what would my client do in that eventuality? And I chimed in that I had cobbled together a really poor quality solution involving other third-party services to solve this problem. It was a modest solution at best, but anyway, then in pops Albert to say, look, I have a WordPress plugin called EmergencyWP, which does all of this. So we're gonna dwell on his plugin today and talk about why he's built it and what it's for and how it might help you. But first of all, Albert, hello. Is there anything you want to do at the beginning to introduce yourself?
Yes, I first, of course, want to thank you to have this opportunity to talk to you and maybe give some information to our listeners on how to plan something like an accident. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Amazing coincidence, bit of timing. That was really good. So we go back, the journey of this whole idea of yours, which is now, incidentally, do you want to drop the URL right at the beginning? Where can we find EmergencyWP?
You can find it on emergencywp.net at the moment.
Right. So there you go. If at any point during this interview you find yourself thinking, what are they on about? Pause. Go and check that website out, and you'll be able to see everything. So, but the history of this goes back to 2008, if I'm right, where you first sort of this idea popped into your head. Do you want to run us through the history from 2008 right up until 2019?
Yeah, let's have this very shortly said. 2008, I married my beautiful wife, and I had some clients that I was working with, and also she had no clue of our bank accounts and stuff that I brought into this marriage, and I had to go to work like half an hour every day by car, and on one of those road drivings, I just thought, how would she handle all the stuff that I have absolutely no problem with, because I know all of this. How would she handle is when I had to go earlier? And I found out she couldn't. She had not all the passwords. It wasn't interesting to her in either way, so she had everything over to me, and I had to find a solution for that.
And so this didn't begin, if I'm correct, as a WordPress plugin. This idea was, I think you first built it on some kind of PHP framework, possibly Cake. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. The thing about WordPress was back in 2012 when I then got this idea into a piece of software, was that WordPress was not known as it is now, like even being more than a blogging system. Now you can use it even as a framework for so many other things, right? But back then, it had security issues. It was not so well known. It had not that widespread over the internet. So I tried it first with a standalone software somewhere in the internet.
Yeah. So fast forward to 2019. Well, we're actually in 2020 now, but you had a brand at that point. It used to be called Memento. But you decided that, well, for obvious reasons, EmergencyWP has a sort of more of a ring to it. It's more identifiable and easy to understand. So that's where we're at now. We've got this plugin. But Albert was very kind in that whenever I produce these podcast episodes, I offer up some show notes, and it's basically a blank document. And and some guests fill it in and others don't. And Albert's helped me a great deal by filling in masses, really large amounts. He's put a lot of thought into this. So I want to go through in the order that you've written things out, because the first thing that is in everybody's mind, I suppose, is what possible use case could there be for a plugin which is going to do something after you've passed away?
Yeah, so EmergencyWP targets several groups of people. Like, let me list just a few. We have those freelancers that manage a lot of client data, and they know that when they pass away, many of their clients would be in an emergency case too, to say it like that, because they might not have all the passwords or data information. That is the first group. So freelancers and solopreneurs who are the only target person for a client. Yeah. So the second group is...
Can I just pause you there, actually, before you go on to the other groups? Is that, so I am a freelancer. I work with people to build their websites, and this exact situation has happened to me. In that I had a client contact me, and it was actually a friend. So it was somebody that when it became difficult, I stuck with it rather than just sort of trying to drop the problem. But he came to me and he said, "Look, I'd like you to take a look at my website and rebuild it, because the guy who previously designed it, and I don't know the circumstances, but he died, he passed away." Okay. And being a trusting chap, he had entrusted absolutely everything to this designer. So the designer had bought the domain, the designer had organized all the DNS, and he'd done it under his own username and his own password, and that all passed with him. And in the end, the process to wrestle the domain and get that website back up and running was so extremely difficult. You have to go through, in the UK, you have to go through this organisation called Nominet. And he gave up. After many, many months of trying to make it work, he just simply gave up, and he said, "I will let it expire. Let the domain expire. I will hopefully grab it." And he used one of those services which catches a domain the moment it expires, and that was his solution. I'll wait till it goes off the internet, and then I'll try and buy it back again, and we can start again. So this is real. It does affect people. Right? Sorry,
exactly.
Big interruption there. Sorry.
No, that's a very fair case, because if you want to be ahead of the other freelancers, you can offer a service to your clients saying that I have somebody in place. If something happens to me, and if it's okay for you, I can share your information with you, of course, but also to the other freelancer that I'm working with very closely, and he can help you. And that is, for a freelancer, it's a very good backup solution in case of an emergency.
Yeah. Okay, so freelancers, just like me, there's a clear use case, but the plugin sort of tackles a whole variety of different situations as well. So let's run through those.
Yeah. So let's just speak about the possibilities. You can store like last letters to your children, or for your wife, or the boss that you didn't like so much, whatever. And you can plan them to be sent immediately after the plugin detects that you're not here anymore, and it can do that in a special way. I will come to that afterwards. You can schedule messages to be sent in a month after you've gone. You have something like a vault that is encrypted, like the bank account standards that we have, it's all built into that plugin. And see, like, I'm a parent. I have 3 sons. And something I dream of is if I do not see my son get to be like 18, and I want to send him an email or 2 or whatever. So I went and built up my own WordPress installation for this case, and I set up some messages that are directed to his email address in the case that I would not experience his birthday there. And that's something that you can do as a parent. You can handle bank accounts, insurances, contracts, online accounts, whatever, and store them encrypted in your WordPress database, so not even your hoster will see that. And you have to provide, of course, the password to the recipient, but they can only see it once the process of emergency WP is finished, meaning that you're dead. Or you can also decide to allow to see them those information right now. Mm-hmm. So it can be a purpose even now. It's not only after you've passed away.
Okay. So yeah, the idea of interacting after the fact with it could be parents communicating to children equally. It could be friends talking to other loved ones. Their close friends or partners or whatever it might be.
Do you know the movie P.S. I Love You? No, you have to see that. That's a guy who dies accidentally, I think, or he has cancer, I'm not sure now. And he has led some letters to his lovely wife, and they are being delivered by his mother-in-law. Oh. And I always thought about this. So what I've built is something like a PS I Love You machine for people that also could be very ill or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you see this, it's quite a common thing in films, isn't it? As an example, slightly off message, but the latest Avengers film, Tony Stark records himself, doesn't he? And he speaks to his son after the fact. And whilst it's going to sound absolutely ridiculous now, it is quite an emotional moment.
Exactly.
It's quite a nice thing to have done. Yeah, so parents talking to children, loved ones talking to other loved ones. But there are some more sort of utilitarian cases as well. And you move on to things like, business owners.
Yeah, right. Like business owners, they can plan what should happen with their company, who has all the law stuff that needs to be handled with. And you can, and that's the beauty of emergency WP. In Germany, if you want to make it bulletproof, you have to go to the notary or to your lawyer and so. But sometimes there are cases when we don't want to make it like that super official, and we just want it to be like quiet and silently done. And that's how you can plan everything for your business. Who will lead it after you're gone? With some simple mails and information that you just add somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Good idea. So figure out how your business ought to be run after the fact. In effect, it's like a will for your business. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, okay. Right. And the next thing is we're planning about having something like a phone gateway. That means that you can connect an add-on to Emergency WP, and it will connect to a phone line and call your grandma. And your grandma just has to pick up the phone, and it will ask her, "Are you fine?" Something like that. And then she has to press a button, and that will be like a daily routine. And if something happens to that, you can decide what you should do, of course, to visit her and see if everything's still fine.
Oh, interesting. So like a monitoring service. Yeah, that's
like a monitoring service. Yeah, right. So not for yourself, but as a service for someone else, for needy people.
Yeah. Oh, that's remarkable. So that's a phone connection. So it makes a phone call, plays a recorded message, and it somehow connects to the WordPress plugin. It checks back and says, okay, we got the number 3. They press the number 3. Everything's okay. Right, reset. Okay. We'll do it all again tomorrow. And then if number 3 doesn't get pressed or the phone doesn't get answered, it triggers something to alert trusted loved ones to find out what's going on.
Exactly. And the cool thing about this is that it can work globally. So if you live in Canada and your grandma is somewhere else, you can monitor her and see if everything's fine. If you're the technical guy in the family, you can help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see a major benefit of of a system like that is the sort of automated, the automated nature of it. With the best will in the world, if I had, let's say, a grandmother who I was concerned about, and I did want on a daily basis to make sure that she was okay, my busy life might lead me to forget to make that phone
exactly
call.
Yeah. And then we have this point of maybe political refugees like Edward Snowden or Julian Assange, who had the problem that they have made something public that was very dangerous for them in the end, and now they had to fear their life and what they could do. I'm sure Edward Snowden may or might laugh at this using a WordPress plugin, but because it's so easy and everyone now has access to it, you could, as a refugee, use a system like that to have sensitive information that will be sent to a newspaper in case of a political, if they catch him or whatever.
Yes, right? Again, going back to films, this kind of idea comes up a lot, doesn't it? You know, the notion of somebody appears in the film who fears for their life and has to go and meet an adversary, and when they meet, they've put this kind of insurance plan. You know, if I don't phone up this telephone number in the next 10 minutes, then such and such is going to happen. So be careful. It's a bit like that. You know, it's protecting yourself.
Exactly,
storing something safely over there, out of sight of the person that that might cause you harm. In this case, a political system. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly like that. So it's covering all the emergencies that someone could have, but we also have thought of something like a fun fact. So I could imagine many people would like the fact that even after their death, they would be able to post something on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. How creepy it sounds, it could be fun, and you could use that for this purpose also. Yeah.
Now, I think a few people at this point who have been spared the pain of missing somebody, a loved one dying, or a sudden calamity of that nature. They may be sort of thinking this seems very edge case and what have you. But there was a real moment in time, wasn't there, which led you to start mulling this over. You mentioned that you had a friend who.
I had a friend, and he was like a bit younger than me. I thought like 23 or so. He had a motorbike accident, and his brother was driving behind him in the car, and he saw him fall, he saw him crash, and he stepped out of his car. He ran to his younger brother and took him in his arms, and they've talked some words, and the younger man said, it's too early. I wanted to do so many things, and then he died. So it was a very emotional moment. And that brought me to these thoughts that it can happen to each of us at any time. And for one reason, it will happen sometimes. So there's the death rate is 100%. So that made it important to me to have something in plan that I will be prepared for this case.
Yeah, interesting. So we started out in 2008 with PHP frameworks and what have you, and then eventually you've settled on WordPress, which I think some people looking at this, they're going to be thinking. I can imagine the objections that are starting to form in their minds, which we'll deal with one at a time, largely based around encryption and the sensitivity of that kind of data. But why WordPress? Why did you opt to make this into a plugin on a CMS platform as opposed to, well, I don't know, for example, a SaaS service where you could have it all on some kind of central database and whatnot?
We've started with a SaaS service back in 2016. That was the first time I created it under the name of Memento, and we started with a WP multi-site. So the WP multi-site option that you have enabled me to have one WordPress installation with many subsites, and that was how we gained 350 beta users, and they tried it, and they are trying it right now on another domain. and we used that for to evolve the software and come to that point now that we have. But why WordPress? So I think it is because of, for me, it's always like WordPress is like the Windows of the web. So many hosters offer a one-click installation. You can just go and get a WordPress installation. You can download the plugins, install it, and it's so easy. And of course, you have to rely on your hosting provider to be a good one. But the main thing is really because it's so easy that I wanted to have this on WordPress and not on a PHP thing that's hard to set up. You have to create databases and whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that. I mean, WordPress now powering 1/3 of the top, I don't know, 10 million websites. It's a good bet, isn't it? It's going to be here for a long time. So, okay, so we've dealt with all the possible use cases. We've dealt with why WordPress and more broadly why you've decided to build this at all. But I can imagine at this point people are going to be starting to think, okay, how does it actually work? What do we actually do? What are the features that are available to us? So in the basic plugin, the features are what? What's the sort of the way that you interact with it? How can you enter data in there, and so on and so forth?
So you start with EmergencyWP as the basic plugin, and then you can extend it by the add-ons that we have. And in the basic plugin, you have a weekly live check that will send you an email with a confirmation link in it. And everything you have to do is just click this email in a predefined time frame, say like 4 days or 2 days. It's up to you how often you check your mailbox. You can have in the basic version, you can have up to 3 contacts, recipients that will get messages after the emergency case has happened, and you can write as many messages to them as you want. So that are the core features right away. And we made the start very cheap for that. So not sure, I won't tell any prices here because prices can change, but just have a look on the website. Yeah.
Okay, so a weekly check, 3 contacts plus an infinite round of messages. When you say you can write as many messages as you like, does that mean there's some kind of drip capability there? In other words, or does it all go out? You can write a load of messages, but they all go out at one time.
Yeah, if you would step up to the first package, you could plan them, but in this basic version, they will go out all at the same time. Yes, right.
But you can write as much as you like.
You can write as much as you like. Yeah.
Okay. So the idea then would be that obviously this is a huge amount of forethought. You've decided. Today, for example, that you're going to set this up, you feel that this is important. You've got to spend that time doing it. There's no simple way of doing it. You've got to log in, decide who your 3 contacts are. I would imagine reach out to those contacts and tell them that this is going to be happening, because certainly I would like to know that this email might be arriving, and then set up the checks. Can I ask, is there a capability, God forbid, but is there a capability, should you miss the link in that email for some reason, like you're on holiday, and you're not checking your emails, can you have further go on, you tell us about that.
You will get a reminder after half of the days of your frequency. So say if you selected 7 days as your live check, after 3.5 days, you will get a reminder before everything starts. But if you're on to more security, I would recommend to get at least a bulletproof package, because in there is a trustee add-on that will enable EmergencyWP to connect to 3 real humans, like friends or partner or your doctor, whatever. And before anything starts, before your messages go out, whatever, they will have to confirm that something's not right with you. So
that's ingenious. Okay.
This is a huge option that we recommend for someone who wants to be really safe. Yeah.
Okay, so the idea there is that there's a higher plan of the plugin, and with that, so rather than you checking the emails and it being reliant upon you, you'll go through that process, but then prior to sending out the actual main body of the stuff that you've locked away in your vault, it will then go to people and say, look, we think that Nathan has passed away. He's told us that you know him. Is this in fact true? And
yes, this is true. And before being a trustee, they have to confirm, because we don't want to scare them. We want them to be informed that they have this responsibility role, and they will know when they get an email that they just give a phone call and check on you.
Yeah. Okay. That's ingenious. I've often pondered this problem, and it never occurred to me that was a solution. That's really clever. I like that. Just get your mates who actually know you. To be the people to say, oh yes, this is true. This is not in error, and it is that he hasn't clicked his links because he's passed away, not because he's on holiday or anything like that. Okay, so we described the basic plan, if you like, where you get the weekly email, you get the three contacts and the messages, and then there's the upgrade that you've just described, but there are more upgrades as well. Do you want to tell us about the other things that you can do to modify the plugin and make it more complex?
Yes, sure. So we have this add-on EmergencyWP Pro that will enable like even more frequency. So if you say that weekly live checks are a bit too much for you, you can extend it to have it like monthly or even 6 monthly. Mm-hmm. This is possible. Then, of course, in the Pro version, you will get a bit of features that are WordPress related, like dashboard widgets that you will see right away when you log in. You can see all your settings, and for some reason I never found the WordPress dashboard really helpful, so I always skipped that and went to my work. But now it makes kind of more sense, seeing when will my next live check be, and so on. You also get a confirmation log that you can see when did I do my last confirmation, my live check. And EmergencyWP Pro is the ground, the basis for all other add-ons. So, for example, if you say, and that's bringing me to the Zapier add-on, if you say that clicking a confirmation link is something that should be the last option, you can connect EmergencyWP probably to your Instagram routine. So if you post an Instagram message, create a live check on EmergencyWP. So because this is something most oftenly is only done by one person if you have a private Instagram account. But you have like 1,500 apps on Zapier. And you can create routines that will lead to your daily behavioral being recorded in a way, and it will send live checks.
So just to confirm, because I think I've understood that. So let's say, for example, I connect Zapier to, I don't know, Trello or something like that. Is what you're saying that I can make it so that if I interact with Trello, in some way, that then says to EmergencyWP, he's okay, he's just done something, he's going about his normal business. Got it.
Exactly. So it will connect to your daily routines.
Yeah, so that could be a whole bunch of things. In my case, I suspect it would be like a Gmail, has created an email, because I do that every day. And if I'm creating emails and sending email, then that is proof positive, because nobody, as far as I'm aware, has my Gmail credentials. So that's definitely me. Yeah, that's but it's ingenious as well.
It's working the other way around also. So if EmergencyWP detects that you're not here anymore, you can trigger actions that you connect through Zapier.
Right.
So that brings a bunch of thousands of new options. So you could switch the light on and off every time, like whatever. Yeah, sounds funny, but you have many opportunities through Zapier that I could not even think about all.
Yeah. That's interesting as well. Good grief, that's really well thought out. I'm really enjoying this. So anything else? Any other modifications that you can do should you decide to purchase additional add-ons apart from what we've already described?
Yeah, let's talk shortly about the Vault. So the Vault is a very special add-on that lets you store information from more than 15 categories, like your bank accounts, social accounts, insurances, and then assign special contacts to those Vault items. So you could create a Vault item like your bank account and assign it to your wife. And you can decide if you want her to know everything about it now. So if she has questions, she can look in her Vault item that's stored in your WordPress account, and she has the access to it right now. But if you decide for revealing it only after your death, you can also, of course, postpone it to that time. That's a Vault, and it brings much value because the encryption that we chose makes or hides all the information from the hosting provider's eyes.
So that brings up an interesting point at this point, because there's this Vault which is like a premium upgrade, and that encrypts everything with 256 AES, and so it's strongly secured. Basically, it's a blob of pseudo random noise as far as the hosting company is aware. It's just ones and zeros, completely random. And exactly. But you've got the key to it, and presumably it unlocks itself at the moment where it needs to distribute some content of it. I don't know how that works, but that is to say that if you don't have that, everything else is just in clear text in the database. So the emails on the other plans, they're just text, and you need to be mindful of that. So maybe don't go writing down your your bank account details or your LastPass login username and password and so on in those ones. Keep it in the Vault. Right.
Exactly. The Vault is just for those sensitive stuff.
Yeah, and so when they receive, let's say, for example, in this case, my wife, I'm on the upgraded Vault add-on, and my wife, I've passed away. My wife receives notification that there's some information for her to read. How does she interact with that? Does she download a blob of data onto the computer, or does it display on the WordPress website on the screen for her to read? How does that all work?
So what you will first do is when you encrypt your information, you will need a key for that. So you will just enter a password, and that's the only thing that you have to care about. Give her the password on any not digital way, I would suppose. Maybe send it through WhatsApp or whatever. Just say to her, store this for an emergency. She does not even need to know what it is for, but she has to get this password because we do not store it on the server for security reasons. And then after EmergencyWP detects that you're not here anymore, she will get an email saying there is something waiting for her. She can go on your website using the link. It is a hash-coded link, so it's not a regular WordPress page that we use here. And there she needs to create an account, and it will run all automatically. She creates an account. She adds a defined password. She logs in, and then she can see all the information after entering the password that you have sent her in advance.
Okay, got it. Okay, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? And sort of skirting around the problem of that password is perennial with the current technologies that we've got with usernames and passwords. Storing a password anywhere is fraught with difficulty. But I do like the idea of literally handing over a piece of paper and saying, okay, this at some point will become useful information. Please put it somewhere safe.
You know how I handled it? When we married, my wife and I, we got a book as a gift, and it became our favorite book. And I placed in the middle of the book, I placed a paper, and there I wrote down the password, and she knows it. If anything happens, she grabbed this book, and no one else except your podcast listeners now know
but they don't know where you live or which book it is.
Right. But and she can have a look there. Yeah,
that's ingenious. I like it. Yeah, I remember listening to various internet security podcasts where this perennial problem of usernames and passwords and the safe storage of passwords comes, and that I think is interesting. I do like your idea of storing in a shared in a place where there's a shared memory.
Right.
And exactly. In this case, a simple one, a book on our shelf that you and I both know, but we're not going to tell anybody else what the book is, let alone why there's a Post-it note in the middle of it with some random characters on it. That's ingenious.
Let me just
go on.
Have one last thing. What we developed the last 3 days, I think it brings very much value also to EmergencyWP. It is the idea of an external trigger. So to say, if I need to accelerate my process, or if someone else needs to accelerate the process, and my life check is set to 14 days or even 30 days, there might be a need to get the trustees to approve that I'm not here anymore faster. So we came up with the idea of an external trigger URL that is known by the trustees, but you can also create a QR code out of it, sticking it, for example, on the back of your smartphone, writing that sticker as I can think about it right now. If something happened to me, scan this QR code. When they scan this, they will be brought to a hidden page on the WordPress site. They can confirm that something happened to me. And the next thing that will happen, my trustees will get informed or notified right away. So we just skip the entire days or months, whatever, and bring it to the point where the trustees can say, hey, Albert is not well anymore, whatever. And so it can be pushed even faster.
Yeah, that's ingenious as well. Like, I have something on my lock screen which is basically in the UK it's called in case of emergency. I don't know how many people do it, but I went once to a talk about, I can't remember even what it was about, but strangely a subject similar to this came up, and somebody said that the fire service and the police are kind of, one of the things that they check is the phone, and they'll check your phone and see if they can get into it. And so scrolling on the front of my phone is the words ICE, ICE, and you at the end of it you put an order, so you do ICE 1, ICE 2 and ICE 3, and that's the order of which people should be contacted. So all you do is write ICE 1 and then a phone number, ICE 2 and then a phone number. And the police know, that phone number is for me to phone. So a similar idea, but done in a digital way. I like it. Now, one of the things that I think is going to crop up, one of the things that's going to be nagging our audience, they're going to be thinking, hang on a minute, this needs a WordPress install. But I have, in this situation, I have passed away. And by tragic luck, the domain that I purchased was, the hosting, by sheer bad coincidence, the hosting ran out 6 days after I passed away. Yeah. So the WordPress install disappears, and along with it goes everything that we've just described. So any recommendations around that?
Yeah, of course. I would say, because I'm dealing with that problem also, I would say select a hosting provider or a hosting offer where you can pay in advance, like at least 5 years. So if you do that and your messages are in those 5 years, you should be fine. But of course, anything can happen. Your WordPress can get hacked, whatever. So you should be on a safe hosting provider. But what you also can do, I have a Synology NAS at home. And did you know that you can install WordPress there? So
it's amazing. Amazing, yeah.
And since it is connected to the internet as well, I can even let EmergencyWP run on there. and I do not need to handle with hosting problems or whatever. It's just stored in my four walls.
So you've got it on a little box which is always on in your house. In this case, a sort of a NAS box, as we call them, and
Exactly.
I suppose you could do the same with an always-on computer. You might have some kind of, I don't know, media server in your house or something like that, or perhaps a Raspberry Pi or something. So there's other options, of course. Yeah, of course. You don't need a hosting company, but you do need something which is always switched on, and make sure that if it does get switched off, it gets switched back on again.
Yeah, right. So you should also care about the security of your WordPress installation. And I would recommend using EmergencyWP always with security plugins or, WordFence, whatever. So to see if some files were changed, so you can do that in the free versions of those plugins. Or to also have an SMTP connector for outgoing mails.
That's good. So, that would be an absolute tragedy if these lovely confirmation emails were marked as spam and never got read. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So in this way, we're coming to a thing where you could think, oh, wow, that needs a bit more of knowledge than I might have, but I don't think it's true for this WordPress podcast listeners.
Yes.
But of course, we thought about that too. And the next thing that we plan now is to have something like a WAAS, a WordPress as a service solution for that, meaning that anyone who wants can use EmergencyWP for a small yearly fee and can handle it without knowing all the stuff about security and we can do that.
Yeah, I get it. So essentially a SaaS model where you're paying, but the technology is exactly the same in the back end. It's just a WordPress multi-site, but it takes the hassle off, and you bear that. And one hopes you've used EmergencyWP in the event that something happens to you, so that other people can take that service over and keep it going.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
It's just such a different idea, and not one that we've ever dealt with before. So I'm really pleased that we've had a chance to talk about this today. Now, one final thing that I did want to cover was, I know that you said you weren't going to discuss the actual pricing. Maybe that's in flux at the moment, but you have very kindly offered our audience some kind of discount, which is really nice. Do you want to describe what you've offered?
Yeah, of course. We are in a very, very early moment of EmergencyWP right now. So I thought it would be a cool way of giving it out with a 50% discount for the lifetime bulletproof package, saying you get everything, all future plugins, what you need in this bulletproof package. And you just pay half of the price that we have right now on the website. And you would just need to use the discount code WPBuilds2020. I will give out those 50% in the first week after the podcast airs. And for the following 3 weeks, we will have it at 20% then. Yeah.
Okay, that's really generous. So we never know quite when the date of the podcast is going to be, because some things just get in the way and other things happen. But from the moment this podcast is released, you have a window of 7 days, a week, during which, if you buy the lifetime bulletproof, have I said that right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the lifetime bulletproof account, then you're going to get 50% off. So basically half. You're going to pay half.
Yeah, exactly.
Thereafter, it's going to drop down to 20% for the following 3 weeks. So there's a month window in which you can get a good discount. But if you want to make use of the big discount, then that would be in the first week. And the code is WPBuilds2020. Everything's lowercase and there are no spaces. So, wow, that's really nice. Before we finish, I'm going to say, is there anything else that you feel that I failed to ask you? And if that's the case, you can ask yourself and then tell us.
I would like to join all people who are thinking about this very sensible case to join our Facebook community. If you just search for EmergencyWP, you will see there We are, at the moment, we're just quite over 40 members there. So feel free to join us and discuss all the things there. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. And in terms of contacting, now we know that we have to go to emergencywp.net. Is there a Twitter handle or an email address that you feel you want to let us know about? Anything, any way of contacting you?
Yeah, we have a Twitter handle. You can search for EmergencyWP there, and we are happy to write back there. Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Well, Albert, thank you for coming on today and talking about something which we have never spoken about before. Really interesting, really unique, and thanks for taking time out your day today. Speak soon.
Thank you, Nathan. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope that you found that particular episode of the podcast useful. I realise that at this time, with everything that we're going through globally, it is a bit of a difficult subject to broach, but possibly an important one. And I did many times think I would pull this episode and put it till later in the roster, but in the end, I felt it was probably a good public service to let you know that this particular plugin exists and you may find some use for it. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by WP and Up. 1 in 4 of us will be directly affected by mental health related illness. WP and Up supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. This is achieved through mentorship, events, training and counselling. Please help enable WP and Up by visiting wpandup.org/give. And just to add a little bit to that advertisement, WP and Up will be available. Head to the wpandup.org website should you need them at this trying time. Okay, that's it for this week. Hopefully you'll join us on Monday when we put out the WP Builds weekly WordPress news and we do a live episode as well. But if not, I'm going to fade in some cheesy music with a sort of bright feel to it to liven us up a little bit as we end the podcast this week. So, bye-bye for now.